We have been told the same story for 30 years. That China is a ticking time bomb. That its economy is a house of cards. And its system is too rigid to survive. The 21st century. But while the West waited for the collapse, something else happened. China stopped playing by our rules. They did not just build factories. They built a global dependency. Today, Washington is not worried about China failing. They are terrified of its success. In Beijing, they do not think in 4-year election cycles. They think in centuries. And right now, we are in year 75 of a 100-year plan to fundamentally shift the center of gravity of the human race. This is not just about trade. It is about the end of Western dominance as we know it. Today, we are looking at the 3 pillars of China's silent war. And why, by the time the West realized the game had changed, the game was already over. For decades, the West viewed China as nothing more than a global workshop, a place to outsource the messy, low-profit work that we no longer wanted to do ourselves. We shifted our manufacturing to their shores to save a few dollars on consumer goods. We thought we were clever. We thought we were using their cheap labor to fuel our own wealth while we kept the high level thinking for ourselves. But while the West was focused on the bottom line of the next quarterly report, Beijing was looking at the next century. This was the start of the Great Deception. China did not just want to build our products. They wanted to own the entire capability of production from the ground up. In the 1990s, companies like Apple, Dell, and Nike began a mass migration. They were lured by the promise of infinite labor and zero regulations. We told ourselves that by bringing China into the global trade system, they would eventually become more like us. We believed that capitalism would bring democracy. We were wrong. Instead of adopting Western values, China adopted Western technology. They created a system of forced technology transfers. If a Western company wanted access to the Chinese market, they had to share their secrets. They had to hand over their blueprints, their patents, and their specialized knowledge. Year after year, the intellectual property of the West flowed east, while our factories in the Midwest were being boarded up and our skilled workers were being laid off. The city of Shenzhen was rising from a fishing village into a technological titan. China did not just learn how to assemble our smartphones. They learned how to mine the rare earth minerals required to build them. They learned how to design the microchips that power them. And most importantly, they learned how to control the shipping lanes that deliver them. Today, this is what experts call structural dependency. It is an invisible chain that links the survival of the Western economy directly to the decisions made in the Great Hall of the People. Think about the scale of this trap. If China were to halt its exports for just 30 days, the Western medical system would begin to collapse. Because they produce 80% of our basic antibiotics, your electronics would vanish from the shelves. Your defense industry would run out of the critical minerals needed for jet engines and missile guidance systems. This is not just a trade relationship. This is hostage economics. By moving our production to China, we did not just export our jobs. We exported our sovereignty. We gave them the keys to our house, and now they are starting to turn the locks. The West thought it was winning a game of checkers, only to realize that China was playing a game of grandmaster chess. While the West was losing its grip on the global supply chain, Beijing was quietly launching the second phase of its 100-year plan. In 2013, President Xi Jinping stood before the world and announced the most ambitious infrastructure project in human history, the Belt and Road Initiative. The media often calls it the New Silk Road, but in the halls of power in Washington and London, it has been given a much darker name: the debt trap. China's strategy was simple but brilliant. They identified developing nations across Asia, Africa, and Eastern Europe that were desperate for growth but had been ignored or abandoned by Western banks. These were countries with crumbling roads, inefficient ports, and no way to pay for the upgrades necessary to enter the modern world. Where the World Bank or the IMF demanded transparency, democratic reforms, and human rights oversight, China demanded nothing but a signature. They offered billions of dollars in loans to build massive bridges, deep water ports, and high-speed railways. But these loans came with a price. Look at the case of Sri Lanka. They borrowed billions to build the Hambantota port, a massive project that many warned was economically unviable. When the country could no longer keep up with the crushing interest payments, they were forced to hand over the entire port to China on a 99-year lease. This was a geopolitical earthquake. By seizing this port, China did not just recover its money, it gained a strategic foothold in the Indian Ocean. This is what military analysts call the string of pearls. It is a network of commercial and naval outposts that allows China to project power thousands of miles away from its own shores. It allows them to bypass the traditional maritime choke points controlled by the United States Navy. In Pakistan, the scale is even larger. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor represents over $60 billion of Chinese investment. It carves a path through some of the most difficult and dangerous terrain on Earth to connect the Arabian Sea directly to Western China. This is the ultimate backdoor. For the first time in modern history, China has a way to import oil and export goods without relying on the narrow Strait of Malacca. Today, over 150 countries have signed onto the Belt and Road. From the jungles of Laos to the mountains of Montenegro, the world is being physically rebuilt with Chinese steel and Chinese debt. Many of these nations are now waking up to a terrifying reality. They did not just build a bridge to the future. They built a bridge that leads straight back to Beijing. As the global economy slows down and interest rates rise, the grip of the dragon only tightens. They are finding out that when China builds you a road, they also decide who is allowed to walk on it. While the world was focused on China's physical roads and bridges, a much more silent expansion was taking place in the digital realm. This is phase 3 of the 100-year plan, the creation of a digital iron curtain. In the West, we often think of artificial intelligence as a tool for convenience. It recommends what we should buy or helps us write emails. But in Beijing, AI is the ultimate weapon of social stability. They have built the most sophisticated surveillance state in human history, fueled by a network of over 700 million high-definition cameras. That is one camera for every 2 citizens. But it is not just the number of cameras that is terrifying. It is the intelligence behind them. These systems, known as Skynet and Sharp Eyes, are capable of facial recognition, gait analysis, and even emotion detection. They can identify a single individual in a crowd of thousands within seconds. They know who you meet, where you go, and how often you visit a place of worship. This data flows into what is known as the social credit system. It is a digital scoreboard for human behavior. If you pay your taxes on time and post positive things about the government, your score goes up. You get access to better loans, faster internet, and high-speed train tickets. But if you commit a social infraction, like jaywalking, failing to sort your trash, or criticizing a government policy, your score drops. When your score is low, the consequences are immediate. Millions of people in China have already been banned from buying plane tickets or staying in luxury hotels because of their social credit standing. It is a system designed to automate obedience. It is a world where the state does not need to use force to control you, because the algorithm does it for them. But here is the part that Washington is truly panicking about. China is no longer keeping this technology inside its borders. Through the digital Silk Road, they are exporting this surveillance innerbox to other nations. From Southeast Asia to Sub-Saharan Africa, authoritarian regimes are buying Chinese AI to monitor their own citizens. They are selling smart city packages that include facial recognition cameras, internet monitoring tools, and data integration platforms. For a dictator in a developing nation, this is an irresistible offer. It is the promise of total control. By exporting this technology, China is not just making money. They are setting the new global standards for how the internet and society should function. They are proving that you can have a high-tech, modern economy without the need for individual freedom or privacy. The digital Iron Curtain is not just falling over China. It is moving across the globe, one fiber optic cable at a time. And once a society is plugged into this grid, there may be no way to ever unplug. Everything we have discussed so far, the dependency on factories, the debt trap ports, and the digital surveillance, is leading toward a single, fixed point in time, the year 2049. This is the centenary of the People's Republic of China. It is the finish line of what insiders call the 100-year marathon. In the Western mind, power is about winning the next election or the next fiscal quarter. But in Beijing, power is measured by the steady, generational erosion of your opponent's will to resist. By 2049, China does not intend to just be a superpower. They intend to be the sole preeminent force on Earth, with a military and an economy. That makes the West's previous dominance look like a historical footnote. We are currently entering the most dangerous phase of this marathon. Military analysts point to the concept of the assassin's mace. This is an ancient Chinese strategic term for a weapon that allows a smaller, weaker warrior to defeat a giant through unconventional means. Today, that mace is a combination of hypersonic missiles, space-based weaponry, and the ability to shut down a rival nation's power grid with a single keystroke. China is no longer trying to match the United States ship for ship. They are building the technology to make those ships obsolete. By 2035, they plan to reach nuclear parity. By 2049, they plan to have a world-class military capable of projecting force into every corner of the globe. But the true endgame is not a hot war. It is a victory achieved without firing a single shot. Sun Tzu, the legendary Chinese strategist, once wrote that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. If China owns the world's infrastructure, controls its data, and holds its debt, then the West will have already lost before the first soldier steps onto the battlefield. We are waking up to a world where the rules are no longer written in Washington, but in Beijing. A world where the values of individual freedom and privacy are replaced by collective stability and algorithmic obedience. The marathon is almost over. The question is no longer whether China will surpass the West. The question is, what will the world look like when they do? The shift we are seeing today is the largest transfer of power in human history. Most people are too distracted by daily politics to see the century-long trap being set right beneath our feet. But if you are watching this, you are now ahead of 99% of the population. This story is far from over. In our next video, we are going to dive deep into the secret underground facilities China is building in the South China Sea. If you want to understand the hidden forces shaping your future, you need to be here. Click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss our next investigation. And if you believe the West still has a chance to turn this marathon around, leave a comment below with the word resistance. Let us start the conversation. Thank you for watching. This is just the beginning.